Hello, good afternoon. Very welcome to the Political Economy panel. I'm Joseph, I'm the director of the panel. Teddy Roosevelt once said, people don't care about how much you know until they know about how much you care. And today with us, we've got 5 very distinguished speakers who are not only experts in their own field, but they also care very deeply about what they do. So please, would you welcome me in joining our 5 very distinguished speakers. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Cynthia Brokaw. I teach pre-modern Chinese history in the history department here, so I am truly Waiham. But that means that I'm particularly interested in learning from our experts about these very interesting questions about contemporary China. Just to give you a little background of the context for this panel, again titled Boom or Bust, an inside look at China's economic and international challenges. Now, as we all know, I think many have been disturbed by China's rise, and more specifically by the departure of its current leadership from the principles that had guided domestic and foreign policy during the term of Deng Xiaoping, architect of the far-reaching market economy reforms of the 1980s. In recent years, China has significantly expanded its diplomatic and economic relationships and influence in the world, launching new institutions like the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and positioning itself as a donor of much-needed public goods through heavy infrastructure investment via, of course, the Belt and Road Initiative. As China's influence has grown, so have the number of countries concerned with its lack of economic reciprocity, its technological policies, its coercive foreign policy practices, and its regional military ambitions. And this dynamic, I think, is nowhere more sharply seen than in the rapid deterioration of U.S.-China relations. This panel is divided into 2 parts. First, we have a moderated Q&A session that will be 50 minutes to an hour. The organizers of the China Summit have prepared questions on 4 different topics relevant to political economy. And the 4 expert panelists will be asked to discuss these questions. Second, there will be an audience Q&A of about 30 minutes, during which we'll invite the audience to ask follow-up questions or new questions of the panelists. Our panelists are 4 scholars who have great expertise in different aspects of China's political economy, finance, public health, politics, and international relations. We believe that the current challenges facing China are diverse, and that only by listening to various voices who can address these challenges from different perspectives can we comprehensively understand the situation and promote change. I'm going to give very, very brief introductions to our speakers with my apologies, but I think we'd like to spend as much time as possible listening to what they have to say and asking questions. So first, to my left and your right, is Dr. Ning Leng, Assistant Professor at the McCourt School of Public Policy at Georgetown University. And she specializes in economic political economy in China, obviously. And her research projects look into China's market building process, state business relations, and the incentive structure of Chinese government officials. Then Professor Zhiguo He, Professor of Finance at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business, where he has taught since 2008. He's also a financial economist serving at the Fuji Bank. And then Dr. Jennifer Lind, Associate Professor of Government at Dartmouth College, author of Sorry States, Apologies in International Politics, a book that examines the effect of war memory on international reconciliation. She's currently writing a book about the speed and complexity with which countries rise to become great powers, obviously very topical. And then last but certainly not least, Dr. Chen, Associate Professor of Public Health, of Global Health, of Economics at the Faculty of Arts and Sciences at Yale University, whose research projects focus on economics and public policies, on population aging, and global health systems. So would you join me in welcoming our four panelists? Okay, the first question I have is on China's aging population. George Magnus, the author of Red Flags, has estimated that China's working age population will decline by 213 million by 2050, so that 1/3 of its total population will be over the age of 60. And the question here is, what impact will this very significant change have on China's economy and its social safety net? Dr. Chen, since this seems to be closest to your own area of expertise, I'm going to put you on the spot first, but of course I will ask the other panelists to contribute.
Thank you so much for this great opportunity. And let me throughout the break to attract the jet. So let me begin with this topic first. So population aging is a major issue globally. But what's differentiate China from other countries might be firstly the size of the aging population. It's still growing and accelerating. So by 2050, by all estimates, it will be reaching about 330 million people above age 60. And so about like 1/3 of the 1/4 to 1/3 of the population will be like in this category. So the size is really matters. The second is the ratio. So that means the support ratio will be changing. So fewer children will support their elderly parents, and this is especially the case when the one-child policy. And even before that, there were different policy encouraging smaller number of births and later marriage and larger birth spacing in 1970s, which is really driven shrink the younger generation. So that will determine many things. I think Dr. He will can talk later about this. Is a lot of things about financial arrangement, because aging itself, in my view, may not be a major challenge, but the preparation for aging population is the key. So with shrink the younger generation to support older generation, so there will be an issue of pension system sustainability about that, and also care needs. So with fewer people taking care of older persons, especially life expectancy in China is still growing. So people are living longer, and if the retirement age is not changing as fast as the life expectancy, extension of that life expectancy, so that means people will need more care. And informal care becomes a major challenge. There's almost no insurance against those long-term care so far in China. In the last few years, there were some pilot cities like trying the long-term care insurance, but it's very minimum and only cover people with physical disability, and mostly only cover people who are enterprise employees in the enterprises, but not covering the residents in rural and urban China. So I think that's a major concern. And also, there's so when we talk about a pension, if you compare China and the U.S., I think every country has 3 pillars of Social Security after retirement. The first one is Social Security income, the basic one. In America, it's like paid by payroll tax, and with shrinking population contributing, but more people claiming that pension. So every country faced a solvency issue about the fund. And the second pillar is more about the employer type of benefit plan, sometimes called defined benefit, defined contribution, those. But in China, most often, those are not established for the majority of the population. Only around, for example, perhaps like 100 million people are covered by those second pillar. But thinking about the third pillar, that's even more of an issue, like personal savings and equities, assets after retirement. Urban residents may have some because of the housing price boom, but in rural, that's almost none. So that's why if you look at the portfolio in China, it's heavily relying on the first pillar, the most basic one. But in America, majority are second pillar and the third pillar. So when the three pillars are not like balanced, are not diversified enough, they will be faced with like major financial issue after retirement. So that's a pension, and also there's a large unbalanced issue. So only 7 provinces have surplus so far, but the remaining like 20 plus provinces have deficit. The central government have to reallocate funds because there were out-migrants provinces which have more of trouble because aging population are there, but younger people going out. Very few people contribute. So the government have to reallocate those resources. Yeah. So I think eventually they need to do several things. I think but 2 most important ones. One is extending the retirement age. So far, it's still 50 for blue-collar females, 55 for white-collar females, and 60 for males. But that's a policy starting from 1950s. At that time, the life expectancy was 43 years old. But so far now it's almost double. It's like 78, almost 78 years life expectancy in China. But this policy is still there after 70 years already. So that need to be determined. And also the second one is you need to build the personal account, individual account for pension. So far, all this like fragmented pension system, government redistribution, all happened because most people do not have individual account. So it's not movable and they don't have account. Even for people have that account, some money in the account, but it's called a notional account because there's no real money inside. So it's promised, but not real money. So in the next couple of years, I think China really need to accelerate building of such individual account, a real account. Then people can move and with their own account. Then we'll avoid the fragmented system issue and avoid the people without support after retirement and after moving. So I think the retirement age and the pension account, those are 2 most important things. And of course, there are some other challenges like Alzheimer, dementia diseases are very costly. Diabetes, hypertension, those prevalence rate, incidence rate in China are much higher than in the US in terms of growth rate. And I think so those are very costly. If without a proper management of such disease, that will cause financial trouble when people are retired. They have to pay like 30% of all healthcare costs out of pocket to pay for those healthcare costs. So far, China's health system is very hospital-centric, so it's built on the major hospitals. But the disease management for those major, expensive, widespread chronic conditions are mostly relying on primary care, like family doctors. But so far, there's no such system in China. So I think those health challenges, retirement challenges, and pension challenges really defines the issues associated with this aging population. Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. He, do you want to add anything on the finances or?
Let me just add 2 positive parts of it. You know, whatever she was saying, obviously, is very true. That when I teach my MBA classes, can show the aging population over years. It's you know, in economist perspective, there's even no uncertainty. It's like you can standing here predict what will happen in the next 50 years. If there's something you can predict, it's really this aging stuff. But I want to add 2 more things. It's not my main point. Is that we invited some Cai Fang. I don't know if you know him. He's a leading expert on this issue. He was mentioning this many long time ago. And now we invited him. He made 2 important, interesting points. I didn't think about it that way. First is like, you know, you must have a personal feeling on that. Is that if you're coming from China, nowadays your parents will worry that whether you can find a good job or not. they worry a lot. They try to make all these connections, making sure you get this intern, blah, blah, blah. Okay. What does it mean? This means that there's a lot of competition, a lot of candidates are able to provide the same kind of a task that you are able to. As a result, you need to compete, right? So kind of nature. This means that the supply somehow, the labor supply are there. And why this is the case? This is because that when you think about the labor, I'm just focusing on labor supply, right? Because that seems to be from the macro perspective. You think about you have a saving, all these things. Those savings, you need to have someone to produce things to satisfy you. Just simply saving is not an answer. You need to have someone to provide the service to you. So in terms of labor, that you need to understand that there's some quality at just the labor. So what Cai found was that he showed a picture was that if you doing some simple adjustment like elementary school education, high school, middle school, and then college education, and redo the plot of the total supply of the labor. Obviously, there's a shift of a more and more higher quality labor during time. And once you do this adjustment, the problem is not that much severe, but obviously still severe, and there is still a very clear downward trend. So in that sense, that it seems like Beijing could do some things to making sure that those college students are not just working in some fancy good with air conditioning jobs, but they are also open to making work on some other jobs where maybe not considered as fancy or elegant as they should, and also that it's important to have the market to determine the wage price. So in the United States, if you do this like a construction work, it's really, really highly paid, really highly paid. In China, it's not yet. And later on, if you have all these market forces to move to let the wage to guide the right person to go to the right place, that issue could have a alleviation in terms of just make the problem not as acute as you might think.
Dr. Ning, please.
Yeah, so I mean, this is such a huge transition that China's looking at, and you've explained it so well. I study international relations, and so we have our set of variables that we're interested in my field about how is this big demographic change going to affect the questions that we ask. But I mean, just the range of issues that Dr. Chen talked about, you can see that it's going to affect China across so many different aspects of society and family life and work life and the environment, and just pick your question, and this is going to affect that. For me, as I said, I focus on international relations, and one of the big questions is China's future growth. So I guess that's a big question for our panel. Will China's economy keep growing? And this is one of the big factors, or people talk about headwinds, that the Chinese economy is looking at, is this shift from basically what was called a demographic dividend, which is they had this really big age cohort that aged into the workforce, into the labor force. And so when that big cohort was of working age, that's when China the growth just exploded. Like if you look at the charts, it's like, here's Mao, here's Deng, still and then 1990s when it literally went like that. And so for one of the big reasons the economists talk about is because this age cohort, or this supersized cohort, aged into the workforce. So we call that a demographic dividend. But what happens when they age further, right? So now they're aging, as Dr. Chen was saying, into retirement age, where instead of producing and saving, which are things that are really good for economic growth, right? Now they're consuming, and they need people, they need caregivers, and so on. So that's the shift that is leading many people to say China's growth is going to face a lot of pressure. So a couple things on this. So one point is, I guess, more reassuring, which is basically this is a phenomenon that all fast rising economies went through. So like Japan after World War II rode that same demographic